And a lot of people shy away from things that are difficult for them, and they don't take it head on. But I find that it's not as bad as it seems. It's not as bad as it appears to be, because regardless of how long it lasts, pain is only temporary.
Freedom is not free. Discover what it takes. It's time to tap and move forward.
Hello and welcome to Tap and Move Forward. I'm your host, Lynn Shelley. Everyone in the military has to go through basic training, and no one will forget their drill sergeant. Or in the Air Force, we call them an MTI, meaning Military Training Instructor. This interview is with my MTI. He had quite a dynamic career with multiple deployments, 4 years at Lackland molding new recruits, and retired after 20 years with the rank of Master Sergeant. In this interview, we don't talk extensively about his career, but focus on basic training, what it's like to work with new recruits, his own leadership discoveries, and a bigger picture of all the effort, sacrifice, and structure that goes into the development of new recruits. If you have been to basic, it might help you see a side of your MTI you didn't know. If you haven't, it will help you understand all of the work and effort and the bigger picture so you don't fall into some of the mental traps that many recruits fall into, like believing your MTI hates you. Now the interview with Wendell Olivier.
I find it really funny because I've been doing this interviewing process for quite some time, and I don't usually feel like I habitually need to call them by their rank. And honestly, I don't even know where you are in your life right now, but I still want to call you Technical Sergeant Olivier. And I have to say, I have had the privilege of having some pretty impressive and amazing people on the podcast. But just talking to you, I was so nervous. I was like so scared to even ask. And I think a lot of that is just from that title of being the MTI and coming in as the new enlistee and trying to figure everything out, and like seeing you as such an authority figure and having that space and that distance that you were kind of on this like amazing pedestal of the perfect person to show me the military.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, because I think I was feeling the same way. I guess in the opposite direction. I wanted to do the best job I could with what I had, and there's definitely some challenges. But thanks.
You say you felt that in the opposite direction?
Yeah, I think what it was initially when I decided to become an MTI, it was because I thought that the military was kind of doing things differently than what I was used to. And, everybody always talks about, well, back in my day, blah, 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 and nobody does anything about it. So I felt like if I could complain about it, I could do something about it. So, I went through the process of applying. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And it's so long ago, but it feels like yesterday, going through the amount of training that I had to go through. I've already been through basic training once, and then I basically had to go through it again, but in a more accelerated and more intense field, because I wasn't just a pipeline student then. I was more along the lines of, okay, well, you're supposed to know how to do all of this stuff, go. And here's your manual, go do it, have fun. And then I realized that the school itself did not teach you how to be a leader. It taught you the format. It taught you, the verbiage. It taught you those types of things. Being a leader came with experience, having to find different ways to motivate the motivator. Like I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day for 4 years. Just to be at work till 9, 10 o'clock sometimes for 3 of those years. And then on the 4th year, I went to academics, which was a little bit more regular pace. But I will tell you that it was something within me that had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and get there before you guys woke up and go to meetings and, and then go, okay, this is what my day is and where do they have to be? How do I get there? Those types of things were very intense. And I didn't realize that that's what you go through because nobody sees behind the veil. Because all you see is this guy that's just like, go here, do this, do that, shut up, get in line, all that kind of deal. But the reality of it is that, we had a very short period of time to get, 50 to 60 people from point A to point B, meaning from the start of 0 week to graduation. And it was very, very intense. So I kind of tried to put my best effort forward because, whatever you saw in the beginning was going to set your standard for the rest of your career. So, wow. I mean, it was different for me for sure. And, going through the ups and downs of being a younger or new MTI at the time, that was a very scary yet kind of overwhelming. I mean, you walk in as a career military member and you think, oh, yeah, I got this. And then you get in there at like 4 o'clock in the morning and you see people full throttle at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you're like, I don't know if I can do this. So, I definitely had the understanding that I really had to put forth a lot of effort and, the sacrifices that were made for my family, they were very supportive. But yeah, I definitely didn't realize that there was going to be a challenge or the challenge that it was going to be, but I'm really grateful that I did it. Yeah, I'm really happy about it. I did the best that I could do. I thought that I made a difference in some people's lives. I tried to influence the best way I could. And, you grow from that as well. I mean, you learn stuff from people, regardless of rank, regardless of position or title, and you learn how to deal with the power that you're given, quote unquote. So it's very, you can take that and go with it. And that's what I try to do.
You said so many important things in there. I have so many more questions. So I'm going to try and go through all of that. There was, a lot of valuable aspects that you were talking about. The first thing that I wanted to ask was, did you then volunteer to be a TI or was it an assignment given to you?
Well, I started out, I volunteered. They didn't start the DSD program until after I was already an MTI. So I volunteered for it. I thought that I knew full well what I was getting into, but I really just wanted to make a difference. So ultimately, I volunteered. I wanted to be the one that says, "Hey, I don't like this, and I'm gonna go do what I can to fix it." So that's how that went down.
So at what point then? What was the moment that it really hit you that it wasn't going to be what you had expected or anticipated?
Well. I walk in, I think I got my orders. I was really excited. I was in Germany at the time. I was actually deployed when I found out that I got the assignment. And, I'm walking around like, oh, I'm going to be an instructor. That's really cool, And, it's cool because for me, when I saw my instructor, I was like, oh, I'm going to do that one day. And then it kind of fell by the wayside. I kind of went a different route. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. So I did it. I got assigned for it. And the first thing that happened to me when I realized that it wasn't exactly what I thought it would be was when I in-processed. And there are some wonderful people there, but they were set in a standard that I was not used to after coming from the operational Air Force. And I walked in and I said, good morning. My name is Sergeant Olivier. I'm here to in-process. And they said, okay, great. Here's your information. Here's this, here's that. And I was like, all right. And they were like, it's not all right. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I'm like, I've been in for a while now. I didn't realize that that's what we were doing. And this is a civilian, and I don't want to say her name. She's a wonderful lady. She was a great mentor. She had been there. She was a blue rope from like the 80s. But yeah, it was very intense. And I was like, what? I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I was just saying, okay, I understood. Just, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I was like, oh, yes, ma'am. And from that day forward, I went to school and, did the curriculum and did the best I could. And, a lot of good wingmen and a lot of good teammates, got us all through. It's a very difficult school. I mean, we're not Marines or the Army or anything, but we have a very intense focus on our particular set of skills. And it's not to diminish anybody or say that we're different. We're not required to do the things that they're required to do. However, I will tell you that you have to have the mental toughness to persevere through what seemed to be a normal conversation, for most. And it's a very interesting dynamic when you really think about, in my head, I'm like, I got accepted to this. You knew I was coming. You thought I was worthy enough to be here. And yet you kind of, it was very intense. And I'm like, I didn't realize that I was a trainee now, but it was worth it. And, I learned a lot from it, and I was very humbled. Here I am, this cocky staff sergeant at the time, like, oh yeah, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. And I wasn't. And, they identified that, and I worked to get better.
That's interesting, because I have talked to another MTI that left my base to go, and he was telling me a lot about the backside of how much work an MTI really needs to put in, which is mind blowing, especially from the perspective of somebody going through. And I guess it does make sense, though, that the whole structure that supports you in all of that madness also has to hold that same high standard, and then it just trickles down quite naturally so that high standard is still kept with those new enlistees coming through. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you, because I do think that it is very typical for people to look at their MTI and to think that they're a type of enemy, like they're making me do this, they don't care, they don't even care about me, they just, but they have no idea about what kind of effort you are putting into it. Did you see personally results from that?
Absolutely. I mean, the first day when people show up, it's like, whatever, I'm me, I'm more important than the team. All these different changes that you see people go through, because even the initial start, it's like, what is happening? And, from your perspective, or not from your perspective, but from your perspective, then it's, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. I'm on this bus alone. But I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do the best I can. They accepted me. I'm going to do this. And it's no different than kind of how I felt. But the thing I think that trainees don't understand is that there's no time in the day. We show our care, our passion for our job, for our success, for getting you from point A to point B by pushing you where you thought you could never go. And, that unfortunately at times has been neglected in the operational Air Force. And people kind of sit back and, I listened to some of your podcasts, just to kind of get a feel for what I was getting myself into. And, like I talked to you before offline, there were some very, very outstanding guests. And, I'm just honored to be a part of it. But, the theme that they have in common is they push themselves. But most of them didn't start out that way. Most of them had somebody to put them in that mindset. They had it, but they didn't really quite know what to do with it. So yeah, I've definitely seen transitions. I've definitely seen the craziness that goes on with people that can't make it. And unfortunately, you have to weed those people out. And it's important, because do you want to be, you're still in the military. So do you want to be in a situation where you have someone you can't trust? And you have to do the best you can to lead the people that want to be led, to try to motivate the people that need motivating, and to unfortunately, remove the people that don't want to be there. Because it's important that when you go to your deployments, when you go to your day-to-day job, when you're operational, the Air Force would not pay you if they didn't need you. And they didn't need you to do the job that they want you to do and do it well. And that's a very interesting transition, but I'll wait for a later time, because the civilian world is no different. You get out there and they don't care about what your issues are. They want you to perform, and they're paying you for it, and they want you to do a good job. And it's no different than the operational Air Force, and it's all relative. And had I been a younger man and been able to talk to myself and say, hey, look, listen, this is what you need to do, those are things that I would have done. And I tried to do them the best I could. tried to take my experiences and give them to you guys as best I could in the short amount of time that we had.
So this is kind of epic, given what you just described, but and it might be a little bit of flattery, but I don't even know if you remember this, because I'm sure you've had so many experiences that like this one little occurrence might not be as impactful for you as it was for me. But I remember one of the first times when we were sizing as a flight, and I had a completely skewed vision or understanding of how tall I was. Like, I'm almost 5'9", and for some reason I thought I was totally average, and I put myself right in the middle of the flight and thought I was good. And like, I tapped a couple of times, but I thought I was fine right there in the middle. And you obviously couldn't allow me and my tall ass to be in the middle of the flight. And you like walked me through, like telling me tap and move forward, like tap and move forward, tap and move forward, tap and move forward. And like, I remember you having this conversation with me of like, you belong in the front. Like, when we size up, already put yourself up there so you don't have to move through the entire flight.
Right.
It's something that's a relatively typical that you might come across, but to me, it's had a much more profound impact, and maybe a type of foreshadowing of my military career, where I did not think I was capable of as much as I was, and having somebody there to push me and to show me that my capabilities and capacities are so far beyond where I assumed them to be, that sometimes I can't even trust myself to know what they are, and I have to rely on somebody that I trust or that has better understanding of the situation. And honestly, it is why I called my podcast Tap and Move Forward.
Oh wow. Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
It's kind of a coming of full circle of that, what that exemplifies for me, and how that happened multiple times throughout my career, and hoping that maybe by doing these interviews, I could in turn give back to those rising ranks and give them the type of information that they need so that they can move forward in their careers.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. And, the thing is that when you're doing the job, you're not the person that you want to be is something we all strive to do. The thing that's important, I feel like I'm rambling, but the thing that's important to know is that MTIs don't usually get thanked that often. The word, the skill sets, and it's annoying because you have to be the guy that's going to be like, all right, get up, hurry up. You have to do those things. You have to do those things because if you do not push the person that's next to you, they just say, oh, okay, cool, this is the standard, this is where I need to be. And I don't know if you realize, but no matter what you did, it was always wrong. And that was by design, because by the time you got to the point of success, you were so far above the standard that your minimal effort was already superb. And, it's a mental game. It's a mental trick that, I learned from a lot of amazing instructors, doing the best that I could to imitate it. But when you really look at it, it's more along those lines of who's going to motivate the motivator, who's going to get this person. And a lot of trainees, they think it's personal. And, it kind of is, but it's in the opposite direction. A lot of times it's like, oh, he's picking on me. Oh, he's doing this, or she's doing this, or she's doing that. And it's like, no, you have the potential to be better, and I want you to be that. The love is different from let me coddle you, let me hold your hand, let me make sure that, oh, this is my baby. That's a parent's love. But the MTI puts that effort in. They're there all night. For you guys, for example, when you guys were going through, I couldn't be there at a certain time, but I was downstairs working. I was downstairs calling on the box. Hey, did you do this? Hurry up, those kinds of things. And, I'm sure that was very frustrating. I remember a time I was actually going into the latrine and I didn't realize that they had trainees in there and I was utilizing the latrine. And this one kid was sitting on the toilet and he goes, yeah, Olivier, blah, blah, blah. And he starts dogging me out. And I'm just like, another trainee walked in the middle of it. And, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not stopping. So we're just going, and it's not nothing weird or anything like that. But he's got the door closed and he doesn't know who's in there. And he's like, oh, yeah, Olivier, blah, blah, blah. And the trainee that heard him say that looked at me and his eyes were as big as like basketballs. And he didn't know what to do. And, for that matter, I just let him continue to talk. And when I got done washing my hands and I said, oh, that's a very interesting conversation there, trainee. How about you come and talk to me more about it when you're done? And he just, like, you can hear his voice sitting at attention on the toilet. Yes, sir. And I'm like, okay, cool. The thing that's funny is that, you get those things, but I understand it. I understand, man, it's a lot of pressure. And it's really weird because my son he just turned 19 and he's interested in joining the Air Force. And, I hope somebody motivates him, like you said I did to you. And that's all I can hope. But I'm really appreciative. I said all that to say that I really appreciate that I was able to help in some small way to make you more outstanding than you were when you got there. So thank you. I really appreciate that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think that, well, it's very obvious that basic training is a foundational piece to your career, and the type of experience that you have, I mean, it can really change things for you. And I definitely felt like leaving, it did change my mindset, and that what you were talking about that level of excellence just being like a standard. I mean, that definitely lived with me for a long time. And in some ways it still does. So, I mean, and I think no matter what your experience and who you are, your MTI is like seared into you. Like just going through that experience and that amount of intensity, like you don't forget that person. Like, whether it's a friendly connection or not, the fact that you've been through that intensity and that you were our leader through it, you talk to people about their basic training experience, everyone will tell you about, well, my MTI this and my MTI that and my MTI this and, oh, that's crazy, guess what my MTI did, so
right.
It is a really big responsibility. I mean, whether or not you hear that much about it, you've had a massive impact on people's lives.
Oh, thanks.
How and also when I was when you agreed to be on the show, I was kind of freaking out about it. So I reached out to Chelsea Bowe, who came through with me, and I was like, guess what? And she was like, oh, that'll be good. He loved us. So, and I do think there was an element with you that I do think that I could tell that you cared about a level of authenticity when you talked to us. Like you didn't want it just to be all like a big wall, but that you wanted to be approachable as a human as well. And I think that did help for us to not just see you as this like dictatorial, like crazy monarch, but instead as like somebody who's trying to keep us in line as we're learning and growing, So
yeah.
How long were you in MTI?
I was in MTI for 4 years. I did 3 years as a MTI with flights, and then I did my last year as an academic instructor, where I just taught the classes, the educational classes, the Air Force history, the self-aid buddy care, beast, all that kind of thing. So yeah.
Was that less stressful being a teacher?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's a different type of stress. When they initially handed me my my core curriculum for being a MTI, it was like these 2 giant books, and you have to know it word for word. Every time you'd have an evaluation, you know, whenever you guys would get evaluated, we would get evaluated as well. And I'm not sure that that's kind of something that people know while they're going through it. They may learn afterwards, but, you know, the evaluation process is very, in my opinion, very intense because, you know, there are key things that you can hit. There are key things that you can miss. And, you know, of course, you know, any good instructor, not to say that I was the best one, because I definitely wasn't, but any good instructor wants to give you all of the information and have you understand it and get it to you to where you go, you know, where you can understand it. The problem is that the difference between being an academic instructor and being, you know, a regular line instructor is you are now given another set of books that you have to basically recall. And then you have to find a way to motivate people to listen to those classes. You know, and to be honest with you, when you're going through getting up at, you know, I guess now it's kind of a little laid back. You know, it's a little later at 5:45, you know, whereas I think you guys got up at 4:45, you know, those types of deals. But, you know, there's a long day, you know, and then you're sitting there and you're looking at the PowerPoint slides. So my next challenge was not so much, you know, step 1, step 2, step 3 is how do I keep you engaged and not be yelling and you know, do what I say, blah, blah, because at that point you cut people off. And that was a more inviting, I need you to get this information because I need you to pass this class, because the Air Force has already spent a lot of money on you by the time you graduate. And, you know, that's not like from a corporate aspect, it's like, okay, well, we already paid this money. We need to get these people through. But I don't want to put anybody through that doesn't deserve to go. So there's a delicate balance of, yeah, I want to do the best I can to get everybody, as many people as possible, to graduate and to be entertained by the class. So that's when I started kind of figuring out ways to tell stories as far as how to get the information across, how to give practical examples of how crazy it was when they first started flying planes and dropping bombs when it was at their feet. And they didn't have a harness or some kind of, you know, mechanism that just dropped precision bombs. It was like, oh yeah, it's on the ground. You pick this thing up and just drop it. What? You're in a plane that's not been in existence for 10 years, and you just got a bomb just rattling at your feet. And you just pick it up and go, yeah, there it is. Ooh. That's some amazing stuff. But if you tell that story by just reading it and being monotone and you know, nobody cares about that. Nobody wants to listen to that type of thing. So my next challenge was to figure out a way to connect, you know, the story, the information, and get people to get it. And then, you know, that was also a challenge. But I think the hardest part of my tour was definitely the hours, being away from my family, and, you know, definitely trying to figure out how to motivate 50, 60 different people at one time, you know.
So what did you find as your favorite tactics for handling that?
Well, when I first started, I didn't know what to do. So I tried to emulate my superiors and my peers, and that didn't work for me. You know, I saw them yelling, I started yelling. Matter of fact, I yelled at this one person, it must have been like 20, 30 minutes. And at the end of it, I couldn't talk. And come to find out, I was wrong as 2 left shoes. And the craziest thing was that all it took was for me to ask a simple question. So I'll give you this scenario. I see an airman or a trainee. She has no blousing straps in her on her pants, and I'm like, "Hey, come here!" Because I'm looking at everybody else, and everybody else is yelling. So I'm just going to follow the leader because I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm yelling, and I'm just going to town. Oh, I guess we get up and we get to do what we want today. Blah 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 blah. And I'm going to town, and I'm coming up with the craziest things that I can come up with, and you know, I don't know, 10 minutes into it, she goes, "Sir, trainee such and such, reports as ordered." I have a waiver, and I'm like, oh my God. So of course, you know, I'm never wrong because I'm an MTI. You know, that's not true, but you know, you have that thing. I'm like, oh, go away. Proceeding, sir. Good military bearing. You know, and it was so embarrassing to me because I wasted my time. I wasted that trainee's time. And, and it was pointless. And nothing, she didn't do anything wrong. Later on, I found her and I said, I said, hey, look, I apologize, blah, blah, blah. And that was hard to do because, a lot of people don't want to talk to, for lack of a better term, and I'll just say trainee, because I was going to say, something else. But nobody wants to say, hey, trainee, I was wrong. Because now it's like, oh, he don't even know what he's doing. And but the reality of it is, it was more important for me to correct my mistake than it was for me to be right. And what I've learned from that is to be me, to ask the questions that I think I need to know before I make an assessment on something. And I think that that's stayed true to me for my entire rest of my career. And now my new career, I ask a lot of questions about what's expected, what's the standard, where's the rules, where can I find them, where can I read them, what's going on with the person that's next to me, so that I know that when I do make a correction, or if I do have to learn something different, then I know that I'm for sure correct in making those assessments and not just assuming that I know that everything is great and there's no backing of the story or whatever. So I definitely was humbled by that experience. So I think just identifying who I was and how I get things done was more important to me after that experience. And getting in touch with how I would really handle something as opposed to what I saw. It was a great stepping stone to kind of emulate people above me, but the next step was to make it my own. And I think that I've done that I think that I did that with going through and following through with the information that I was given, or asking the correct question first and not just assuming.
So that sounds like it was really helpful in understanding structurally how you wanted to respond, but did you still use the same tools? Like, for example, you said just maybe yelling was still a tool, but you would just be more careful about where you applied it.
Right. I think one of the tools that I try to identify with every trainee, and I still try to do that today. I try to find out what motivates that person. And, yelling may not do it. And if you're a one-trick pony, all you're going to do is yell. You're going to lose 90% of the people that are supposed to follow you, regardless if they want to or not. So, my toolbox grew, quote unquote, by understanding the person, getting that second, third, fourth layer in and trying to identify who this person is as an individual, as opposed to you're a number, you do what I say, that's how it goes, get out of my face. Now, there was definitely time for that, and it's important. It's a really important skill. It's really important to be able to be a follower, sometimes. But for the most part, I found that if I explained things to people and I gave them the reason behind it, it made them more effective. It made me more effective. And I spent a lot less time correcting things that I had to go fix as opposed to yelling every day. So yelling was definitely interesting. It was always fun. It was never malicious, I don't think, at least not intentionally. However, that's the one thing that people expect. But when you hit them with compassion, when you hit them with understanding, when you hit them with discipline and not giving them the ammunition they want to say, oh, I'm going to quit. Those things are important as well. And I think that I tried to do that. I don't know if that answers your question, but there we go.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you too, because you're talking about what works for different people. Like how do you detect what motivates somebody?
Well, first and foremost, you have to understand who you're dealing with. So you have to observe. You have to see what motivates them. You have to pay attention to your surroundings. As cheesy as it sounds, attention to detail. And that's definitely a skill that has been I don't even know how you would even put that in perspective. It's definitely a skill that's required, and you can learn to read a room. You can learn to identify what is important, how to get this person done, because you'll do something and initially it's trial and error, no different than what happened when you guys first got there. I don't know any of you at all, or I don't know anybody. You are brand new to me. I'm brand new to you. I'm going to start off this way. And as we go along, as I identify what motivates you, as I identify what what changes your, what you like and dislike. To some degree, I will change that so that I can get the best result for you and for me, because we're going through it together, but not necessarily, if that makes any sense. So I think that number one, you have to pay attention to detail. Number two, you have to be willing to understand and put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're being, I guess in this case, that you're in charge of. And once you do that, you explain the perspective from both sides, and you try to get buy-in as best as possible. And then if that doesn't work, then you go back to yelling, because at the end of the day, you do what I tell you to do, because that's what I get paid to do. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason why you're not in charge and I am. It sounds bad, but in the reality of it is you do the best you can with what you have, and you try to, just do the right thing and try to, and I think that comes across. I think that people identify that, and whether they like it or not, they understand that you're not maliciously doing anything to hurt them. I think that people go along with that a lot better than if you're just yelling for the hell of it, and you can definitely tell the difference.
One of the things I really appreciate about what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that with any new group or new assignment, new position, that there is a level of discovery that is innate or that is part of the process, that you can't really expect yourself to just come in and to perfectly understand or be on point every single time with every single decision. But it's a little bit of a discovery process of how to work with that new group.
Sure. And it shows itself when you PCS. In the job that I'm doing now, I go to different projects. So, I'm meeting a lot of different people, and by nature, I'm an introvert. I know that you probably wouldn't know that, but, by nature, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I want to go in, I want to do my job, and I want to go home. I don't want to talk to you. I don't care about your family. I don't want nothing bad to happen to them, but I don't want to discuss it. You don't need to know about mine. I don't need to know about yours. I just need to do my job. However, with that said, I do realize, because I'm a little older, this experience as an MTI, it showed me, it's important to get to know the people that you're with. It's important to get to know and understand what motivates them. But, it's very difficult for me to do that. But that doesn't mean I don't do it. And a lot of people shy away from things that are difficult for them, and they don't take it head on. But I find that it's not as bad as it seems. It's not as bad as it appears to be, because regardless of how long it lasts, pain is only temporary. And those are the things that I have to tell myself every day. And when you're a part of a small business, a family-owned small business, and you've got different clients and they have different levels of expectation, it's no different than the transition of being in the military. You go to a PCS or you go TUI, you have a different boss than your original boss, and their likes and dislikes are very different than your primary boss dislikes and likes, so you have to definitely adapt. And I think that, fortunately for me, the Air Force did a really good job of putting me in a position where I would go TDY or go on a deployment by myself, and I would have to meet somebody new for the first time, hey, where do I sleep? Where do I go? What do I do? What do you expect from me? And once I've learned how to take that, it's helped me now in my civilian career. As a retired master sergeant, it's definitely different, because you do have to take a step back from being the leader to now following in some regards to, a new standard, a new way of life. The transitioning between, active duty military for me and going out and retiring and becoming a part of the civilian world is definitely, it's similar, but it's definitely a different transition, especially for me. So those things that help me, transition from doing the things that I did and talking to those people and meeting new people and doing those things has helped me, dramatically as far as engaging with clients that I work with every day. So it's definitely important.
You're not in the military anymore then?
I am no longer in the military. I retired last year. So I've been out for a year, and what's today?
You
Today
retired
is the 19th, so a year and 18 days.
Oh, nice. You retired like after a full 20?
I did. I retired after 20 years. I think it was 20 years, 14 days. 20 years and 14 days.
Wow.
And, I was very fortunate that I had a plan and I was able to execute that plan. And, now I just, I do something completely different. And it's just a different step in my life. Yeah, it's weird.
It sounds like there's a lot of skill sets or habits, though, that have followed you from your military career into the civilian sector.
Yeah, I think, I know we're supposed to stay positive, but initially when I joined the military, I didn't do it for, it's the military. I want to be, I want to defend my country. To be honest, I didn't do it for that. Initially. Initially, I had a kid at a very young age, and I didn't have very many opportunities. So, I was supposed to go to college. I was supposed to do all these different things. But and from my perspective, I got to feed my family. So how do I do that? And I enlisted in the military. And initially, that was my goal. Hey, I need to provide for my family. And this is the easiest way possible for me to do it. That's what I'm going to do. But as I got older, as I moved forward, and I will tell you that it's not been a straight upward trajectory either. I think a lot of people feel like, you got to be perfect your entire career. You got to be, this. I mean, it helps for sure. You definitely want to be as good as you can be. But things that people don't know, my son, when I had my son, I just wanted a job so that I could pay bills. And then it got to the point where it's like, okay, well, I'm in the military. I might as well do military stuff. So then it was, okay, I got to be a staff sergeant and really early, relatively speaking. And I started to notice that the tech sergeants that were above me were working all the time. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work every day, all day. I just don't want to do that. I'm good at working. I don't have to really worry about it because as a staff sergeant in the position that I was in, I didn't have to do anything extra other than take care of me and, maybe one or two airmen, which was not that big a deal because they were quote unquote my friends from when I was a senior airman. So it's like, all right, man, look, don't get me in trouble. I won't get you in trouble. We good. Let's do what we're supposed to do and go home. Be done. Real easy. But that was at that time I was like, you know what? I don't want to be promoted. I want to be a staff sergeant forever, which is the silliest thing in the world. And had I had an opportunity to go back, I would beat the hell out of myself because at some point I started doing the work of a master sergeant. I started doing the work of a senior master sergeant, but I was only getting paid as a staff sergeant. So what I will say to you is that while I, at the time, thought that was my best move, I thought that, hey, I can coast. There's no pressure. There's no this. There's no that. Because, again, I wasn't always who I am today, and not to say that was great, but it's good for me, and I'm not the MTI I didn't start out being the MTI that you met, I guess is my point. And when I started, noticing that all of my friends that were higher ranked than me, they were just working, EPRs, packages, going to work, doing this, being in trouble for things that they had no control over. Those things kind of scared me from being promoted. And if I could go back, I would beat the hell out of myself because that is the dumbest thing that I've ever done to myself because I stopped my excellence because I was afraid that I wasn't good enough. I was afraid that I want to be lazy. I want to go and do this. I just want to chill out. I want to go home and play PlayStation at the end of the day. So it was a long time. Like it took me a really long time to make tech. In fact, I made tech when I got to San Antonio because I didn't want to do it, and that was not good enough. So I applied, I tested, I passed it, I actually studied and made a good grade. Imagine that. And, so I passed, I got my stripe and then I became you guys' instructor. And then after that, my next testing cycle, I made master. So it just told me that, hey, all I had to do was do what I was supposed to do. But, I lost a lot of time in between because I was afraid to be great or to excel to the best of my ability. And, like I said, I lost a lot of money doing that.
What do you think it was that got you to actually decide to lean in or to do something about it?
I'm very fortunate to have not only a wonderful wife and wonderful children, but my mom, my dad at the time, my sister. Those people motivated me. My core family, they motivated me to move forward. My sister's awesome. I have a job today because she's been grinding since I've been born, basically. She's 9 years older than me. And, while I was doing my military thing and kind of hanging out and chilling, she was always grinding. Every time I saw her, she was working. Even when she came to visit when I was on leave, she'd go, "Oh, Wendell's here, blah, 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 let me go out." And she'd have papers scattered all over the floor, just working and grinding and doing it. And, one day I looked up and I'm like, well, what am I doing? And my sister, she's a great inspiration to me because she had to do it on her own. She was the older sister. So, my dad and my sister and my mom, they had a foundation and I was just being silly. I was wasting my time. So I did what I could. And I was just like, this is stupid. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So I just, from that point forward, I just did the best I could do and it worked out. And I've been fortunate ever since.
So it sounds like you were inspired by the people that were close to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know that most people, some people don't have that. So, wow, luckily for me, I got to pay attention.
So you said that your son is interested in joining. If he does join, what advice would you give him?
Well, the advice that I did give him was that it's not as easy as it sounds. It's definitely going to require work. It's definitely not as easy as I may have made it appear, because you got to think that when he was in his teen years, I was in my latter part of my career. So I kind of knew what was going on. I knew how to go from step one to step two. But when I was younger, I had the same problems that he has now. And the challenge is to, let him live his life and make his choices, make his decisions, and still try to guide him in the best way possible. And it's a different perspective from when you talk to me than when he talks to me, because he doesn't know. He knows that I was an MTI, but he doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what that puts in. I was like, you better not embarrass me, because, I want to go up there and be one of those dudes. Oh yeah, when I was pushing out of these dorms, no, I don't want to do that. I think that's silly. But those are things that are important. And another thing that pushed me in my career is that my family name. I didn't want to go to a Christmas party or to a squadron function and people start talking shit about me to my family, or they walk away. Oh, I don't even like him. He don't do no work. He don't blah. Because people do that, unfortunately. And I didn't want that to be me. I wanted my family to be proud of me, to say, yeah, my husband or my dad or my brother, my son, he did it the right way. He didn't go out and do all this crazy stuff, and he didn't get in trouble. He, all this kind of thing. I didn't want that to be a part of my city, because I think that family pride is important. And that was another reason why I was motivated. And I tried to explain that to him. And I was like, you got to get out there, man. It's not as easy as it sounds. A lot of people do it, but it's not easy. So we'll see.
Do you think that motivation that you're talking about, did that come very naturally to you, or is that something that you earned?
I don't know. I think it had to be grown. I think that it took a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of great supervisors to put me in the right direction, to push me in the right direction. I was always very self-aware as far as what I knew how to do. If I knew how to do it, you didn't have to ask, you didn't have to question it, you didn't have to do anything. But if I wasn't sure, then, I always had the great leadership to push me in the right direction. Now, I had some bad ones, but for the most part, my direct supervisors have always been awesome. They've always been, I've been very fortunate in the fact that I always had people to push me when I needed them to, and not so much when I didn't, So I really don't know the right answer for that. I think it was just a little bit natural and a little bit,
cultivated.
Cultivated, sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you see a new group of enlistees or new trainees, what kind of skill sets are you looking for your leaders?
A little bit of confidence goes a long way. One of the ways that I learned to identify good leaders is to find the ones that are not afraid. I mean, they're a little scared. Everybody's a little scared, and that's okay. But find the ones that are not afraid and see what they got afterwards. How do you find student leaders? You start paying attention to the people that, have intangibles. Those things that you can't record. I made a good grade. Okay, well, what does that mean? That just means you studied. But what are you going to do when I'm not looking? What are you going to do when, I walked away and now I'm still paying attention, but you don't think that, and you just, observation is key in those types of moments. I mean, no different than when you meet somebody you're interested in. When you first see them, you're like, okay, I'm interested, and the next thing is like, okay, well, what are they going to do now? How are they going to, follow this up? I'm initially interested. Let's see what they got now. And, no different than when you go and you start doing what you do. Anybody that goes and meets somebody, a new group of people, you tend to move in the direction of the people that are similar to you. And in this case, if I'm a leader, I want people that's going to be similar to lead, or in a way that they can lead as well. And you watch that because you start to key in on those identifying factors that are, you start to identify what skills you need by watching and observing. You start to see what they do when you're not there. You start to hear the stuff that they say. And, the trick was to find those people, come on, guys, we can do it. And then as soon as you walk away, they're like, man, I ain't doing that shit. That's one of those things you have to try to identify. And once you figure out how to catch that, you start to hone in on that third layer. You start to identify, okay, well, that sounds great while I'm here, but what does that mean to you? How do you get from point A to point B? And if they say straight line, okay, cool, let's do it. And, it's more about action than what people say, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like that you were just looking for, well, you brought up obviously the confidence, but then also that there's alignment with what they say and what they do.
Correct.
In person, whether they're being watched or not watched.
Absolutely.
So I have to ask, are there stories that you like to tell? Because I'm sure that you just have some of the craziest stories.
Well,
yeah.
Hey, I remember time, and I don't remember which flight it was, but I had an all-female flight, and I don't think it was you guys for sure. But I had another female flight, and we were sitting in the day room, and they were kind of close to graduation. They were like, I think in the 7th week going into their 8th week. And I was passing out mail, and all of a sudden, one of my female trainees broke wind in the day room. And it was just, I'm passing out mail. I'm handing out mail. No, I'm passing out mail, and the trainee breaks wind. And from out of the blue, another trainee goes, "Air power, sir." And I'm like, it took everything in my power not to laugh, because it was the funniest thing. It was just too perfect. And, I'm like, "Shut up, you," like that. And I'm just trying to be as professional as I can be by telling somebody to shut up. But as soon as I walked out of that day room, I went into my office, I closed the door, and I swear I must have laughed for like 20 minutes. We were late for chow, and I couldn't control it. I swear it was the funniest thing. For sure, that's definitely one of the things that is really funny to happen. And, the funny thing is that about a week later, when we were at the coin ceremony, at retreat, and I go to the airman and I said, that's not the type of air power I was trying to train you for, but I'll stay any job. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And I was like, have a good day. And that was it. You know, it was really funny. I think another time is when I had a trainee that was not as stellar as his parents thought he was. Not to say that he was not a good kid, but he was definitely lacking. And the frustrating part for most MTIs, and they may or may not agree to this, but I'm out of the military now, so whatever, is when parents come up to you and try to, oh, how are they? You know, and it's a very challenging question, because on one hand, you want to be like, hey, your kid's a screw up. But on the other hand, it's like, well, they've come a long way. And you really kind of have to give a more positive answer than you kind of want. Well, there was an instructor friend of mine that decided that she wanted to be truthful with the airmen's family members, and they got really upset. So she was like, the mom walked up to her and she's like, oh, Sergeant such and such, how was my son? And then she was like, I talked to your son before we had this situation, and I explained to him that he might not want you to ask that question. And of course, I'm just a passerby, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen? And I'm like, no, don't do it. And she proceeded to say, your son is no different than when he left your house, lazy. And and she just went in on this lady, and I was like, I don't know what to do. You know, I was like, this is like my third, like, I don't know, it's like probably my second 2.5 years in. And she just went off on this lady, and I was like, hey man, you can't do that. And she's like, well, I wasn't lying. I was like, well, no, but that's not good. So her mom went up, the trainee's mom went up to our chief. And, you know, ever since then, they were like, if you don't have anything positive to say, you don't say nothing. So every time a mom or a parent come up to me and be like, how was my son? He graduated, ma'am. And then I'd walk away and just laugh in my brain, because I knew that this lady had just went off on it. And I was just thinking, what if I did that? And I was like, no, I can't do it. But yeah, it's craziness, man. It's people think that there's some magical cure for your kid being in a different space. And to some degree it is true, but they have to want it first. You can't make somebody something that they're not. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, sometimes you meet the standard and you pass anyway, you know, whether you should be there or not. You know, you can't. You know, I try my best not to cheat people. If they pass, they pass. If they were not my favorite person, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were bad for the Air Force. It just means I didn't like them personally. But professionally, that wasn't my responsibility to like them. Professionally, it was my job to get them as prepared as I could and to, you know, do my job. And I think that's a lot of things that people don't tend to know how to do these days, is to separate their personal opinion from their professional opinion. And it's very difficult to do that. So I'll try my best, and if they got through, I hope the best for them. I wish the best for them. And but yeah, I definitely had those dirtbags that I wanted to get rid of for sure. But some of them made it, some of them didn't, you know, and they deserved it. If they made it, they deserved it. They did everything, you know, that they were supposed to do. So I can't be mad at them for it.
What do you really think is the difference between the people who allow basic training to really have an impact on them versus the ones that leave the same as they came?
I think that the people that allowed basic training to do what it was supposed to do, I think they had a willingness to be better, and they didn't have necessarily maybe a direction to get there, or maybe they had an idea, but they didn't know quite how to get to that point, and they allowed the people that were paid to bring them to that next level to go to the next level. I think that basic training definitely identifies your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, and your strengths, and regardless of what branch of service you're in. And I think that it depends on the person, and if they're willing to change, if they want to do better, and they don't have an avenue to get there, I think when they get to basic training, they find that and they do the best they can, and that's where you go.
I like that.
You know, yeah, I mean, you have to be willing to change. I mean, it's no different from, you know, I want to stop smoking. For example, you can't, hey, you need to stop smoking. It's bad for you. But nobody cares. They want to do it because they enjoy it for whatever reason. But if they're willing to stop smoking, then they can go to the counseling, and the counseling will actually work because they want to do it. People want to do things they want to do. And I know that sounds silly and very obvious, but the hard part is when people don't want to do something and you have to get them to do it. That's the hard part. And sometimes you're successful and sometimes you're not. But you have to, take the bitter with the sweet sometimes and do the best you can and hope everything works out.
I have one last question. How do you respond when people thank you for your service?
Wow. It's always strange to me because I never really thought about it as a job. Like I knew it was a job, and I knew that I was doing something that most people haven't done. But it's definitely strange. It's definitely weird. I'm very appreciative and grateful that they at least say it. This was last year. I was able to go to the Veterans Day Memorial Service in Houston. And it was so amazing to see all the people that turned out. And, Houston doesn't necessarily have a military base. They have a couple of guard bases, and they have a Ellington Field. But for the most part, the city of Houston is so big, there's not a large military presence. There's recruiters and some guardsmen and some airmen, a little bit here and there sprinkled. But when I went to that event, I'm telling you, majority, the leadership in the city of Houston showed up, and it was very inspiring. It was very important, and representatives were there. The mayor was there. There's a lot of people, and a lot of people have ties to the military that you would not even expect. And, I think it's very humbling when people thank me for my service. So the short answer to that is that, I respond with gratitude. However, I know that a lot of people say it because it seems to be a trend. And sometimes you can kind of tell, and when I can identify those times, it's very frustrating, but I still appreciate it nonetheless. And I try to do what I can to pass that forward. So, yeah.
So if there's someone that approaches you that is obviously has more of a connection or more of an understanding and has more of a heartfelt thank you for your service, is it the same response, or does your response change?
No, I think, I don't want to impose on people. So I usually just say thank you and you're welcome. And I really appreciate the fact that you took the time out to say that. And I press on. But I definitely tell you that it feels different for me when I can tell that there's a sincere message behind it and not just something people say.
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Well, this has been amazing. Honestly, I really appreciate you going through and detailing your perspectives. I think it's really valuable. I think that I think this interview has a lot to offer. So thank you for being on the show and for continuing to share your insights now. Let's see, almost 9 years, over 8 years. I guess it's about 8 years,
Yeah.
down the line. So yes, I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you've done in order to push the culture forward, in order to be a better leader. And I think that it takes things like this for you to move forward, and to not only do a great job in the military, which sounds like you're doing, which is outstanding. I mean, that makes me feel good because I feel like you're from my tree. You're a branch from the tree that I grew, and I really appreciate that. It's very awesome to see the amount of work that you're putting in to even give back, to have people have a venue to go to, or an avenue to go down and to identify those things that can make them better. From what I can tell, you don't isolate people. You are who you are, which is very important, and you bring people in the right direction. You move them forward, and a lot of people spend a lot of time holding people back. And I really appreciate the fact that you're putting in this kind of work, and it's awesome. And I can't, I'm a fan now, I subscribe to your page. I hope that you continue to have awesomeness go on. I hope that you can, pass on. Maybe you should be an MTI. There's a challenge for you, Yeah, you're like, yeah. Look at your face. Yeah, see? Well, it's work.
There's a piece of me that definitely would be like, that would be amazing. Just because the past 2 years I've worked with our new enlistees in the Utah Air National Guard. And to me, it has been the most meaningful thing that I've done in my career. And just
step it up.
And knowing that I'm setting in that foundation, and when they come back and tell me that I really helped them and that they got a really good foundation, and we've had an incredible amount of dorm chiefs that have come back just recently. Like it's kind of crazy if you think about it, from our small population of the Utah Air National Guard, for us to have so many dorm chiefs. It doesn't really make sense unless they're showing up with the confidence and the capability to do that. So being involved in preparing and kind of navigating and helping them to even see in themselves value before they go to basic, so that when they show up for basic, they already know, hey, I've got preparation in these areas. And so they already have that like step up with confidence. It's just been so rewarding.
But I'm definitely proud of what you've accomplished and what you all have accomplished, because I follow you guys all on the little honor flight little thing, and I watch you grow, and I'm like, man, I did not realize that you guys were so awesome. I was like, man, I wish I made staff and tech and all this stuff. Like, it's awesome. You guys are killing it, and I'm really proud of all of you. I'm really proud of you, especially because you're moving this forward. I mean, your podcast is giving, it's going to be here forever. Whether you stop doing it or not, what you've recorded is written history or verbal history.
Yes.
Audio history. And it's amazing that you are doing what you're doing because you don't have to. And that's where you find good leadership right there. And, that cannot make me any prouder than to do those things, to watch this happen before my eyes. It's amazing. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm so grateful that you're as awesome as you've become, and you never know as an instructor who you're going to get and what's going to happen to them. And when things like this happen, it's very, very great. It's very exciting to see the growth that you guys have made. And I hope that I did not, minimize your podcast in any way, because I saw the list of illustrious guests that you have, and by no means am I on any of those levels. So I will say thank you. And anytime you want to do it again, please feel free. Maybe you can, by the time you're done editing this thing, it's going to have like 2 minutes worth of stuff you can use. So
stop it. No,
we'll be good to go.
Honestly, I've tried to be clear with people that I don't just look for military accomplishment, but for mindsets, so it's not just that.
Well, I have that too now. No,
but and I legitimately think that your mindsets, and there's been so many times throughout this, like I make the little quote memes of like little things that people say. And sometimes it can be a little difficult for me to like combing through the interview and being like, ooh, like what really stands out. But I already can tell you that there's been multiple times you've said multiple things that I've been like, oh, that'd be perfect. That'd be perfect. That's another one. So, I mean, I think it's become so naturally ingrained in just who you are that you don't even necessarily think about it. Because I
have this quote book that I read from. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, what is it?
No, I'm teasing. That has nothing to do with anything. That's just a book that I have for work. I just thought that would be funny. But if you take one thing from this, know that I'm as genuine as I can be. And, I don't have anything to prove to anybody, thank God. I don't have to function in any way. I can do whatever I want, especially now because I'm out. Like I can literally go and do whatever I want. But it's really important for me to know that I really want to continue to mentor you guys, because had I known some of the things that I know now, I guess maybe you can loop this in a little later, but first term the Airmen's Council, the Senior NCO Board, those things are very, very in line with what corporations do. I didn't know that. If I'd have known that, that I would have been a part of those things a little bit more often than I was, knowing how to interact, going to conferences. I got to go to conference. I go to a conference on Monday in Florida, and that's the same thing. The Airmen's Council, the NCO Council, all of those types of things, top three, all of those things are no different. They're basically mirrored from the corporate sector. And when you're trying to make more money, when you get on the outside, those are things that you need to do. So I would recommend, if you're not doing them, then maybe you want to participate a little bit. I'm not asking you to go crazy and be the president or nothing like that, but maybe you want to get a feel for what that's like, because since I've been out, I've met with congressmen, congresswomen, politicians. I flew to DC. I didn't know that I would do that kind of thing. I thought that was something that was like, oh, cool. But those are things that you don't know that you need to be prepared for until it's like, oh, crap, I should have did this earlier. But those types of leadership opportunities, they're not only good for packages, they're good for building your skill set when it comes to communicating with people that you don't know that you're going to meet yet. So I will definitely share that with you. And again, if you guys want more, if you want to know a little bit more about what I do offline, that's fine too. I'm really proud of all of you. And I watch you guys on Facebook all the time. I'm like, man, look at that doing. I share with my wife, and she's like, oh, that's cool. And then I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. Because when they first started, they were, sir, I don't know how to breathe, sir. Not that that's true, but you know what I mean. So.
Yeah, no, I get it. Because, I was 28 when I joined. So a little bit more life experience under my belt can make a really big difference. And so I remember just how absurdly simple things would be described, that I'd be like, duh, this is so simple. Like the laundry part, I put the card here, I do it just like this. And then, but it seemed inevitable that somebody still messed it up. And I'd be like, what? How did it?
Yeah.
What part did you miss? Like, it was explained.
You know what it is? It's because you cannot be your normal self when you're under a lot of pressure for the first time. And even though it's as simple as standing in a space and not moving around, people do it all the time because they fall back to what they're used to. And that's the whole point of basic training, is to get you out of those broken habits, out of those bad habits, and put you in a space where you're going to have to do it on your own. And I use that to this day. Every day it feels like I'm going through basic training again, just because, this is a whole new world for me as far as being in the corporate world. And I've been in it for a year now, and I feel just as lost as I did when I first started. But as I look backwards and turn my head around and go, okay, I've definitely come a long way from where I started to where I am now. But, it's a challenge, and I have to continue to motivate. I have to continue to do the things that you guys said I did for you. So this right here makes my day. This is awesome, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it again. So thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and found a new mindset to help you excel. For more information, please visit tamfpodcast.com/MTI.